everyone. I want to welcome you to our discussion series event. Our topic today is keys to finding your best leaders. And we're going to be walking you through 3 case studies and sort of different evolutionary stages that organizations can be at when it comes to developing a culture of leadership. And after the presentation, we'll be splitting everyone up into small groups, and we've got some critical questions for you to discuss around this topic and to share experiences and ideas. So welcome to our event today. So today is about the keys to finding your best leaders, because there are some best practices that work really well. Like any practice, it's steps taken consistently and not massive overnight changes, but small steps taken consistently over time that actually bring actual change. So I want to talk to you about what those best practices are, because sometimes in our day-to-day work, these kinds of endeavors that are outside our day-to-day work can feel really overwhelming and kind of go in the too hard basket because we don't know exactly what steps to take. But it's not complicated. It's again, knowing what they are, what's worked, what's proven, and taking those steps. Your organization, or maybe even you within your own teams, have already taken some of these steps. I'm going to walk you through 3 different case studies of situations we see all the time. And some more than others. I will talk about that. And just what the evolution is if you're wanting to have some influence, or within your own teams develop leaders. There are things that you can do, even if your organization overall hasn't instituted anything corporate-wide. We always hope that that is where it starts, but sometimes things have to come from the ground up. Okay, so let's talk about leadership and some of the best practices. I'm going to share my screen. And Laura, do we have the right view?
Very good.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So this is about keys to finding your best leaders. And just off the top, we talk about having a culture of leadership. And every organization has unique circumstances, but really it's about how the organization values people and the role people play in success versus technical skills or some other historic attributes. It's how they support skill development throughout, is not just once someone gets into a leadership position, that sometimes happens is someone's promoted often for their technical skills. They're in the role of leading a bunch of people, and not only are they having to do their own work, but they're having to grow as a leader right in that moment too. But how can we back that up and support skill development all the way along? Having a culture of leadership means you have strategies for advancing talent from different levels forward. And how can people access that? The strategies that you have, is equity and inclusion built into it? Is there equal access? Is there consideration for the different skills that some people have already mastered and maybe they need to master other ones? Or is everyone going through leadership development at the same rate, the same pace, the same content? And it's also how the organization defines leadership. And what we often find is there isn't a good definition of what leadership means now, not just for now, but also for the future. So we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to take you through 3 case studies. The first case study is what we find most common today in organizations. And I will say it is across the board, different industries. So if you see some familiarity within your own organization, just know we haven't chosen your organization for this, but this is what we see commonly throughout. So one of the things, and these organizations in case study number 1 are highly successful. So they make good money. They are considered a leader in their industry. Well, what they're most rewarding are technical skills and years of service. So historically, as people have stayed, they're the ones that get promoted, or if they're really good technically, those are skills that are valued more than some other skills like personal skills. We often find they have a lot of long-term comfortable employees. And what I mean by comfortable is, they like their role. They're not going to rock the boat too much. There might be a little bit of a tendency not to speak up and not bring about change, because the things that are rewarded are years of service and technical skill. People often in the senior management group, we do find other than IT and finance, those tend to be positions that tend to get hired from outside a little bit more because they're specialized. They have long tenure with the company, sometimes over 30 years. And there's often low diversity at that senior leadership level. They will pride themselves in having sort of a do-it-yourself approach to things, not asking for outside help unless they absolutely have to, kind of growing organically from within because that's how they've become successful. And even though the market might have changed, the industry might have changed, they still really value their own organic growth. And what that happens though is that puts them in a situation where they don't know what they don't know. HR in these types of organizations are seen as more administrative positions. So decisions often don't involve HR as often as they should. They tend to hire junior and intermediate staff externally and bringing them in for those technical skills and to fill in those gaps. But when it comes to management positions, they're promoting from within, again, going back to those technical and technical skills and the tenure. There's some leadership development training that happens. I mean, they know they need to do that, but it's mostly seen the people who can access it, it's seen more as a reward for either their years of service or their accomplishment or hard work and their technical expertise. So it tends to be on an ad hoc basis. Sometimes there'll be a leadership development program that everyone goes through, but in terms of customized to the person and to the role, we don't often see there's that connection. There typically is not a formal leadership development track or program, but it's often talked about as being a need, like for people who want to stay on a technical track, if there was something there, people desire that, it just isn't in place, or if people want to go into management, that isn't often formally in place. And when it comes to succession and promotion, there's few people involved in those decisions. What we find is that senior leaders tend to make those decisions on their own, or they sort of have an idea in mind over time of who they want in that position or who they see in that position, regardless of who might have joined the company in the meantime. So that is a common scenario that we see today. And the words that describe this kind of culture when it comes to leadership, it's more of a fixed mindset about what leadership requires, and it tends to be more subjective. It's often based on the status quo and what's worked before. Can be a more traditional or conservative approach. And when it comes to alignment of senior leaders about what leadership requires, it's fragmented. You might have some people that agree, but there's not often the conversations going on about what are the leadership characteristics we need now and for the future. So some of the consequences of this type of case is that lone decision making. Often there'll be spreadsheets of different people and different skills, but again, it's subjective. And so they're ad hoc, internally derived metrics that aren't based on social science. When it comes to technical skills, that might be a little bit easier, but with leaders, there's a whole package that we have to develop. Often there's subjective rationalization for the choice of leader. And so, people they want who they want in a position based on those other factors I've already mentioned. And so they will really double down on the rationalization of that, even if there are other people who have some of the same skills or perhaps other ones that actually might be helpful for the future. But because there isn't consultation on that, they don't come to light. So yeah, lack of consultation with stakeholders about what's required. And one of the consequences, it can lead to lower morale about growth opportunities with the company. So if they don't see that there's a track for growth or that they have been noticed as a potential emerging leader, then they might be open-minded to other opportunities that might exist for them at other organizations. So and there's also a high value employees self-select out, especially if they're ambitious and they want to move up into different streams or positions. So some of the things you might hear are, why bother? Why bother putting myself out there? Why bother going for that position? They already know who they want in the role anyway. We all know who the next manager will be. It's always been well known that so-and-so is going to become the next manager or team lead. And then there's a understanding, and it may be true or may not be true, but there's a thought that managers have their list of people that they've already picked for succession or for promotion or for certain streams as either technical leads or people leadership. One of the other things we hear is only those that sacrifice themselves get the opportunities. So even though you might have people who have family obligations who are working very hard and producing really good results, they're not always seen burning the midnight oil. So again, that goes back to that sort of traditional and conservative mindset that those who stay in the office the longest are the ones who are actually more committed and producing the most. So case study number 2, there's some traction in the organization to do something differently. So in this situation, the organization has some of the same characteristics as the previous case. However, there are some differences. The first one is that the company is increasingly understanding of the value of strategic HR specialists. So taking a look at HR from a strategic viewpoint, aligning people strategies to the overall strategic plan. HR, hopefully at this point, has a seat at the table, at the senior leadership table. Still sometimes not, but we hope so. Top decision makers actually declare that leadership development is a strategic priority versus some of the traditional things, metrics and measures of success, which is client satisfaction, revenue, and some of the other things that are important, but they also prioritize leadership development. And what we see in these cases where there is some progression is there is use of metrics, but use of metrics mainly in recruitment. So that, when it's used for recruitment, it's just one part of the recruitment process. You still need a great process. You still need to consider technical skills and the interview and how well they are personally, how they show up, what their presence is like. But that metrics can be used for to really identify some of those strong personal and leadership skills. But we often see it's mostly used for recruitment. They're not sure what to do differently, but they're open to different methods of growing and developing people, finding the right fit, assessing to see what people's strengths are. So there's a shift forward in looking at different methods. And so they're interested in using metrics for leadership development and succession. But one of the concerns is that chances are, because they're evolving, some people might have been told actually that they're in line for other positions or in line to do different types of work or join different projects. And so there's an expectation, and they're concerned about how to make a change when those expectations have already been placed there. So in this stage of evolution, some of the words that describe it's still structured. They're open to alternative practices as long as there's an ease of entry. It's not something that's, the whole organization has to change, but can be slowly implemented and continue to progress. And more objectivity is starting to come in about who's a good fit. Because in the first case, it's all subjective, often based on very few, maybe only even one or two people's ideas around what makes a great leader for the organization. Some of the consequences that can still exist, it's ad hoc. So they are willing to hire expertise, but it's around very specific people-focused projects. So that's a change, that's an evolution. It's a challenge to implement corporate-wide strategies when it comes to leadership development and succession. That will hopefully come later, but it's difficult, and you'll find either different offices or different regions will have their own projects or things that they're doing, but it isn't cohesive corporately. Different offices continue to have their same practices. I just mentioned that. And often employees don't know how to access leadership development or don't know how to ask to be considered or assessed or to get coaching internally about where they should go in their career. So career conversations happen, but often they just happen because they need to, but there isn't as much follow-up, or the employee doesn't know what to do next. And so there's not much opportunity to move forward on those plans. Or one of the things we hear is I don't know how I'm supposed to develop. I don't know really where I can grow and what I can do, but my manager wants me to tell them. Shouldn't the manager be helping me and coach me into how to move forward? Some of the things we'll hear is I've been asked if I'm interested in leadership, but I don't know what that means. Apparently there's courses I can take. I just don't know how to access them. This is when metrics start coming into play more. So people often at the most senior leadership levels will say, I don't trust metrics. They stereotype you. And often they'll push back on metrics because again, they want things to work the way they always have, or they want certain people in positions or to develop certain individuals because they know what their strengths are. There might be other individuals that they don't interact with as much, so they don't have a comfort level that they might be a good fit for a certain track of development. And then often we'll see, I hear HR is working on something, but we haven't been told anything because it isn't something that is implemented um, collectively. They know things are brewing and things are happening. It's becoming important to the organization, but they're not really sure what that is. Or this is a common thing we hear too in these organizations. It's in our strategic plan, but nothing's happening. I'm not really sure how it ties into what we're doing. So the next case study, our last one, is where you find the real keys to finding your best leaders, which is why we made that the topic of discussion today. So in these organizations, the leadership team seeks to understand and be proactive with the changes in the industry, what's going on with the workforce. Instead of talking about millennials as being challenges, they look into, what makes them great, what their strengths are, what kind of support they need in order to grow with a company, especially as so many of the boomers and Gen Xers are starting to retire out now. There's going to be a huge change over there, and we'll be seeing more, younger and younger leaders coming into our organizations. Often they haven't had enough leadership development, and so it's hard for them to hit the ground running. Leaders are aligned on the importance of people strategies for future growth, so they prioritize the development of a formal leadership program internally to kind of grow leaders from within. There will be times that you need to hire externally for leadership positions, and but at least you have the right mindset to be able to find the good fit. The program is based on obtaining success as a leader both now and for the future. So the discussions that happen at the senior leadership table are, what are the leadership characteristics that are successful now, that are helping our teams? What are the changes in leadership capabilities that we're going to need for the future based on everything that we're understanding? Like as an example, in the case study number 1, perhaps what they need in their industry is a disruptor within their team, within their leadership team. But because it's been really comfortable and they've sort of grown together, bringing in someone who has a really outside the box viewpoint or might be more assertive in going after opportunities is really a tough thing to consider. But that might be what they need for the future. So some bold conversations about what are the characteristics that are going to continue to help the organization be successful. They also promote and market their formal leadership development program, whatever kind of process they have, as a retention and attraction strategy. So they will often name it, they will logo it, they will have promotional materials, they will get it out there so that the market knows that they're about developing strong leaders and they have a way for people to do that. And when I say strong leaders, I'm not just saying for people to go into a leadership title position, but it's developing a leadership mindset so that if my role is, as a project manager, then I see myself as a leader with that project team. If my role is as a CAD operator, then I see myself as I want to be a leader in my area to be able so that my team can have the best product. So it's breeding that mindset of leadership throughout every level. They will use well-defined metrics, and I'm going to go through the ones that can maybe give you what you want for recruitment, like the previous case. Also for leadership competencies where they actually define what those are, they have measures for them, and they know which ones are the top required for success in a role. And they will use those metrics for succession and promotion opportunities. They'll use those metrics for coaching opportunities, and it becomes a part of sort of the living ecosystem of developing people. Okay. Their leadership competencies that they define are tied to the performance measurement system. And performance measurement is a challenging thing, especially for large organizations. And the thought of going back in and modifying it, sometimes it's a harder, doesn't feel so good in the stomach because it's a big endeavor. However, if you're continually updating it to the competencies and accountabilities that you're looking for, especially at the leadership levels, then you're going to have better outcomes. In this type of organization, all employees are assessed for their strengths and interests, and each can choose and be empowered really to decide what stream they want to go into for development based on those metrics. So we will often hear in our coaching with people that we'll ask them, what are your goals? What role do you want? Like, what do you see for yourself going forward? Do you see yourself becoming a people manager? And often they'll say, oh, no, definitely not. I don't want that. So we ask them why. And they'll say, well, it looks like a big headache. And, I just really like the work that I'm doing. But yet, when we assess them, they have very, very good strengths, and can potentially develop in areas that would make a real impact with people. So when we can bring those back and coach them, or even, internally they're coaching from their bosses and other maybe peers or other mentors, is focused on those, they see a different opportunity for themselves where they hadn't before. Sometimes we find they're actually really best suited where they are and they're most happy that way. And that's completely fine too, because they can develop in that role as well. You'll find that there's a strong culture of leadership at every level, which I had talked about earlier. And these organizations definitely higher retention and higher attraction of talent and higher satisfaction overall. So those to us are the keys. So words that describe this stage of evolution is there's a growth mindset, and it's more collaborative, especially around senior leadership, about what's required, how can people tap into these opportunities. There's more equity and inclusion in hiring and developing leaders. It's an objective evaluation because metrics are also part of the process as well. They're not the whole process, they're part of it. And managers see themselves as coaches. So you have more coaching in the organization as a result. The benefits are you have that senior alignment on what's required for leaders. Otherwise, it's confusing. I'm going to show you there's 25 soft skills required for leadership success. So if we leave it up to people to figure that out for themselves, how are they going to know what to do and where to focus their priority? Accountabilities get well defined. So for each role, what is the role accountable for? And so people coming in would have that understanding right off the get-go. And they'll have assessment about how they fit to that and what the gaps are that they should work on. It's a cohesive approach, and it is more activated at a corporate-wide level. And that doesn't mean it has to start there. Ideally, it would. But if it doesn't, if you have one area that's really focused and doing it well, and they have the best results, and they have very happy people, and they attract great talent, well, it's going to take notice, hopefully, and it will balloon from there. And there's a greater impact on leadership strengths overall. Employees also feel very appreciated for their efforts. If the organization spends time to get to know them, to assess their strengths, to coach them in developing them, to helping them define how they want to move, what streams they want to move in, where do they want to go in the future, believe me, they're going to feel much more valued. And there's equal opportunity for everyone. There's equality and there's equity. So there's equal opportunity for people to be considered and to decide for themselves also if they want to go into certain development tracks. But within there, the metrics help them have an equality-based journey, because different people, like if we set a benchmark up here for these are the skills and attributes that you need, some people will have already developed some of those. Others may have not yet. So their journeys will be different, but they're all going for the same bar. Phrases you'll hear, If I want to move into management, there's a program I can join. Everyone can have a career here. And these are things we definitely hear. We're not just guessing at this. Success in my role is clearly defined. I know what I need to do to move up. And there's diversity in our leadership group. And believe me, an entire employee group is looking for more diversity. They need to see themselves there or people like them so they know that there's a real opportunity and they feel valued. Okay. So just because we want to get you to have some discussion with each other, I just want to say a strategic leadership approach has standardized leadership accountabilities, involves all the stakeholders. The accountabilities are very well defined, people in plain language, so people know what's needed for success. People get identified for roles they suit, there's metrics, and it's not left up to subjective reasoning or preference. Everyone knows what skills to work on, and coaching is targeted to the right priorities and to the individual. So how do you do this? Well, there are a set of assessments, and believe me, there are hundreds of assessments on the market. In our 38-year history, we've seen them all. And there's really only a handful, and actually less than a handful, I would say 3, maybe 4 tops that I think are valid and reliable for these purposes. So TTI is a company that we are a partner of. And the reason we love them is because they are the most valid and reliable. Their assessments can actually, there's only 2 assessments that can be used in a court of law for labor relations cases. TTI assessments are one of them. So that tells you the validity and reliability. It's also because their norm data set is 10,000 people. It's over 10,000 people. So when those metrics are based on that many people, it's not just a small sampling. Also, there's internal certification. If HR people want to become certified in these, we can provide that. So it's one suite and it does many things. The first thing it does is for succession, you can create a custom benchmark for a particular role to say, these are the skills and attributes, the personal skills and attributes required for success in the role, no matter who we put in it. The role requires that. If the role could talk, that's what's needed. It assesses current leaders and helps them develop further, and it assesses emerging leaders. So same suite of tools to that benchmark. For recruitment, there's a 2 science assessment, which measures behaviors and what motivates and drives that behavior. If your organization is currently using a behavior-only assessment, I would caution you on that, because behavior is what we see on the outside. We don't know what drives that on the inside. So for example, people volunteer, that's a behavior. Some people volunteer to make change happen. Some people volunteer because they're altruistic. Some people volunteer because they're very analytical and want to make sure that resources are used well. So volunteering is one thing, but there's many different reasons behind it. So you want to measure what's underneath behaviors. For senior roles, there's a 3 science that measures all those 2 things, but also 25 soft skills required for leadership. And soft skills are really hard to measure, and this is the assessment that does it best, in my opinion. For leadership development, internally, individuals get assessed, the results are debriefed with them, and if you have someone certified internally, that can happen all internally, which is great. And then they can come up with their own customized leadership development action plan that's then shared with their manager. So there's this beautiful loop of coaching and developing that goes on between them. And people feel very valued when there's that kind of objective measurement, self-awareness, understanding, and growth. And then for ongoing coaching, you can help them prioritize what skills and areas they want to work on. And it's a guide for both the supervisor and the employee themselves. So as we wrap up, I just want to show you what these could look like. So one of the first things for senior leadership to do, or HR specialists, is to help define what are the accountabilities of a role. And this is the one step that gets missed because it takes some effort and it's a collaborative exercise. But once you have this set, then it's the basis and foundation for everything that gets measured. So in this situation, it's just a generic sample. We have 5 key areas that this role is responsible for. We give it a percentage. People come up with exactly what is the wording when it comes to technical competency, it's providing expertise and mentoring to ensure quality work and develop skills of staff. So that mentoring piece was brought into it. So it's very specific. From there, once you have those accountabilities, there's a questionnaire that helps you define what the role looks like. In this role for behaviors, that assessment, which can have up to 10 people answer that questionnaire, shows you for success, there's 4 behaviors that are required, top behaviors. There's 12 behaviors overall that are assessed, but these are the top 4 required: interaction, competitiveness, urgency, frequent change. It shows you what the top 4 driving forces need to be. And then it shows you the top 7 competencies, those soft skills competencies. So what you do is then you can assess individuals and it'll tell you what the match is. Now, you're never going to get a perfect match, but what it shows you is we don't need to help them. Their behaviors already are a perfect fit. Well, they're not perfect. It's good. The driving forces, there are some things that they could work on, that selfless approach to helping others. In the competency, you can see exactly what are the competencies that they should be placing priority and how we can help them develop so that they are a better fit for the role so they can grow and be successful in that. So whether you have someone in the role currently or you want someone to move into that role, you can, or you have someone that you're hiring from the outside, you can use the same assessment, do a gap analysis, and it'll tell you how closely they're aligned. For those of you that have used DISC behavior, DISC is the behavioral model that's used in these assessments. So it gives you an overview of how they match up. In that DISC circle on the right-hand side, it shows you that the role was assessed as a conducting persuader. That's somebody who's interacting with people, engaging others to move forward, going after problems and challenges assertively. And it shows you that in this sample, Samuel is a conducting persuader as well. So he's a great fit behaviorally. There's other areas where he might need to place some effort then on those competencies. So it gives you a great overview. This is my favorite thing. In measuring soft skills, which again are quite difficult, what it does is it shows you for each person where they've already developed, what needs developing, and maybe where they should be placing their first attention. So it will give you a measure of how well they're developed in each area. So decision making, you know what, they're already well developed in that. Let's not have them focus on that. They obviously can make solid decisions. But when it comes to interpersonal skills, that's something that's moderately developed. Their role might require that. So when you match this up to the benchmark for the role, then again, they can create an appropriate action plan. And just lastly, the roadmap for succession leadership development. You want to identify potential leaders beyond what you see. There are very good potential leaders within your midst that aren't the vocal ones. Their approach might be, well, they know I do good work, so they'll see that I can move forward. Well, that's not happening all the time. People have other things to focus on. So measurement and metrics helps you identify those. You want to use good predictive analytics tools. You want to coach for development and commitment to the things they want to do. Involve them in idea generation and decisions at higher levels. By bringing people into the decision-making table earlier than you think, actually helps them see how decisions are made, where influence is, and can really help them see the possibility of the kinds of things they could do. You want to create your own leadership development program with a mix of internal and external resources and training. People are looking for that opportunity and when they're selecting organizations they want to work for and make a commitment to. Put them on strategic projects so they learn by experience, especially if they can fail forward. If there's opportunities for that to, help them try something, and if it doesn't go well, that's no problem. What did you learn from it? Coaching is a nice tie into that. You want to involve them in business and strategic planning. Those activities are often saved for people in a certain group, but there's a lot of good thinking and idea generation, especially outside the box, if you include people at other levels. And you want to assess and place the right candidates as succession arises. When people are fit for a role or they have really worked hard to develop their skills in an area, their success is so much better, and they also impact other people in a much more positive way. So in a nutshell, that's the roadmap. I just want to leave you with this. Who are the best leaders hidden amongst your teams? I bet there's a lot more than people initially realize.